The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
24 minutes now to 8 the time. Will not surprise you that Warren Ingram's been looking at, he doesn't call them New Year's resolutions, but he does talk about one money habit to change this year. He's a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital. Warren, good evening and happy 2026 to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm hoping it's going to be a fantastic year like last year for South African investors.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly all of the things seem to be lining up in the right way. So there's a lot, I think, to look forward to in 2026. Okay, I do need to start at the beginning here. Why is it important at this time to sort of change your relationship a little bit with money? Which is really a question, I suppose, about why on earth do humans do New Year's resolutions in the first place? It's
one of my most frustrating behaviors to observe. With humanity, where I'm someone who exercises pretty consistently through a year, and sometimes I have to go to gym and not able to go running on the mountain or on the roads, and always at the start of the year, the gym is absolutely overcrowded and packed, and when you look around in sort of 3 months later, the gym's pretty back to normal. In other words, largely empty. And we see that same behavior, somewhere around the beginning of spring, 1st of September, the gym fills up again. And I think it happens in many aspects. People look at their fitness, they look at their financial well-being, and usually it happens when we're on holiday and we take a moment to take stock of life. And if it's someone like me, you look at the belly and you go, well, that belly's not as tight as I would like it. It needs to get a bit slimmed down. And if the money's not as good as it should be, the investment balances aren't what I would like them to be, then that's the time when you've got a bit of time to reflect, to say, okay, let me reset and restart. And when we look at these resolutions that people make, it's a bit like, a government policy. We have 50 priorities. And when you have 50 priorities, guess what? You don't accomplish anything, because that's far too much for any one person or any one government to accomplish. So the reality is we need to narrow down and focus rather than have a long list of things that we're unhappy with, because you're never going to get through 5 or 10 years resolutions by the end of the year. It's just not possible.
You suggest we should change just one money habit. And the problem, I suppose, that you're pointing to is that we'll often make a series of resolutions. This is what I'm going to change my finances this year. I'm going to have 10, 20 bullet points under that. I'm going to do all of these things. What happens when we do that?
Well, I mean, typically we can't make a lot of progress, if we've got 5 or 10 things, and especially if they're relatively big. I'm going to, run comrades by the end of March, and run a marathon by the end of March, and I'm going to have saved myself an extra R1 million. All of those kind of very big pipe dreams, and if we set those kinds of goals, at the start of a year, and they feel big and they feel very far away, what happens is we lose motivation, because human beings like progress. We like to track how we're going, and we like to see that we're making strides towards a goal. And so to me, you've got to give yourself a much more attainable goal, and really you want to find a way of saying, okay, if it's money, this is the money show, let's talk about money and not fitness. Then actually, I need to set myself a small, realistic goal that I can actually achieve, where I can reward myself and feel the pride of making progress and taking my life in a direction where I want it to go, rather than saying I've got this list of goals and actually I've gone nowhere, and then all the sense of shame and frustration and embarrassment builds up, and when that happens, what we do is we go back to the old habits which got us into the problem we're in right now.
I mean, it's like eating. You miss your dietary goal for the week. You feel bad about it, so you have a chocolate. It's exactly the same thing in a way. Does changing one habit, are you likely to be much more successful? And I'm talking, I suppose, about building momentum, because I've found often in so many things, exercise, dieting, money, once you get momentum going, life becomes a lot easier.
Exactly, and I'm sorry, I'm keep coming back to fitness, but it's such a nice analogy for money. If you're one of those people that struggles to get up and go for a walk, let's just say you want to start getting on the road and just start walking, just to get the legs going again. The secret is don't do anything tonight except pack out your walking shoes, pack out all the stuff you need to wear tomorrow morning, and then put it right in your bedroom door so that you can't but avoid bumping into it when you wake up in the morning. And it's one less thing you have to decide to do. It's already done for you. All you've got to do is put the clothes on and get out the door. And then the very last thing you do is set the alarm appropriately so that you get up and go. And it's the same with money, where if we can just do one thing, even if it seems like a small thing, that we can actually achieve. I mean, it doesn't take a heck of a lot to pack out your running clothes. It's the same with money. Can you do one thing that might not seem like saving R1,000,000, but can you take one small step, one action that you do once a week or once a month, whatever it is, to get you on that goal, to the bigger goal eventually. And I think that's the thing here, is then we start to build momentum because we start to feel good about ourselves. We've actually achieved something. We did that one step, or that one, whether it's once a week or once a month, and it encourages us to keep going, and we don't lose faith and kind of build up that financial shame, which I think bothers a lot of people in the world.
Okay, so our one financial habit, how do we make it stick?
I think there are three things to make sure that a habit sticks. And the very first one is, please don't sit down and say, okay, I want to save more, because that doesn't mean anything. More, if you save 1 cent more than you saved last year, then you've saved more. It's not a measurable thing. So rather say, I'd like to save 10 Rand a month, or I want to save 100 Rand a week extra than what I was doing before. Make it attainable. Obviously, I think, and I shouldn't say obviously. A lot of people don't set attainable goals, but look at what you can do. Look at what's achievable, and then make it absolutely measurable. And say, okay, if the goal is I want to increase my savings, I'm going to, on the first of every month, just soon after payday, I'm going to set up a debit order so that I move, 1,000 Rand from my current account into my savings account. And if you set up a debit order, you've done something that's specific, you've done it on a particular day, and it's something you can measure and tick off and give yourself that pat on the back to say, I've done the one thing and I'm on my way. I'm making a very significant difference to where I was last year. And it takes a bit of time to see the benefit of that. But if you can do that and you can be very specific, then that's the key to this. When you just say, I'm going to save more, it's not measurable. It's not attainable, actually, because you don't even know what you're really trying to achieve. So my suggestion is make it specific, make it attainable, make it easy to measure, and then get going. And then I think the second step is we've got to manage human behavior. So one of the things is we shouldn't have to decide every month, okay, how much money am I going to save? What we should rather do is decide once that I'm going to set up a debit order, or I'm going to put a reminder in my calendar if you don't want to set up debit orders, and it's going to be on the same day every month, and I'm going to start then with that decision already automated, because we do like things to be easy in life. That's why so many people keep their bank accounts at banks that they don't like anymore, because it takes so much inertia to kind of overcome the thing that you're in, the habit that you're in. And one way to do that is, if you make it automatic, it's out of your life already. The decision's made. Something's happening every month, and it's something that works in your favor. So you don't need additional willpower. Back to your chocolate example, you don't need willpower to not buy the chocolate not to eat the chocolate if it's not in your house. So it takes inertia, overcoming inertia, to go and get in your car and drive to go and buy the thing, or to order it from a retailer and get them to deliver it to you. So anything that requires willpower in a positive way will be difficult unless you automate. So to me, that's step two. And then the last one is make it measurable so that you can see progress. In other words, if you're saying, I want to save 100 Rand a week, okay, that's 400 or 500 Rand a month. And track that once a month. Look back and say, have I done that? Have I saved that money? And over the year, that should account to whatever the number is that you've set yourself. And so I've either, I've saved it for 52 weeks of the year, or I've saved 12,000 because the goal was 1,000 Rand a month. But you want to see those goals in a measured way, and then you want to track your progress. It also motivates you if you're slightly off the goal to then get back on track again. And again, back to the first point, it needs to be attainable. You want to know that your goals are measurable and within reach, because then you keep the motivation. So to me, those are the 3 steps to make this habit stick, Stephen.
There's some bad things that we do. And if you can change the bad habit, you sort of, changing it to the positive. And one of them is, and I mean, I do this all the time, Warren, is I find myself looking at my bank account on my phone to see how I'm doing. You think that's a very bad thing?
It is if you're in both respects. Let's say you're in a bad financial position. Well, then looking at your debit, your credit balances, how much you owe the banks every single day, it's not going to change anything. You're going to look at it today and you're going to look at it tomorrow. Looking at something is not going to change the reality. And all it does, I think, it actually just makes us more anxious, but potentially starts to affect other parts of our life. So you might not sleep as well. And that starts to spiral where you wake up in the morning tired, then you end up spending on the extra coffee you promised you weren't going to buy so that you get through the day. And then you check your bank account at the end of the night again, and you get more upset and you don't sleep. And so you can set yourself off on a very bad track. Whereas if you say, whatever your day is, but let's just say it's Sunday morning, you're going to check your bank account to measure your progress. So you're going to be saying, I'm checking my account for purpose, with a purpose. In other words, I want to know that I've controlled my spending over the week and I've actually managed to save a bit of money. So it's a reward for doing good. Or alternatively, it's the one day a week where you now take stock and say, okay, hang on, the week's about to start again next, tomorrow, whatever the day is. And I need to just be very careful. I've overspent in the past week and I need to reset to make sure that I control the expenditure so that I get to the end of the month and I've achieved the goal. So I think it's very positive if you're checking your account with purpose, but just checking it because it's traumatizing. All that's doing is really damaging your psychology, and it adds back to the shame and all the horrible cycle that you're in now. So break the cycle. Just stop checking, and it's just a habit that we're in, and it's one we can stop very easily. Just stop. Just don't look at it again.
There are a lot of us who will, on a particular day of the week, go and spend money. Saturday is a good example of that. And it's sort of Saturday's the day we go shopping, or Saturday's the day we do this and enjoy ourselves. You suggest we need to be very careful of that.
Yeah, if you struggle with controlling your spending, then spend this time looking at the day of the week where you might be doing that the most. And you're absolutely right. It might be Saturday is the day where you kind of wake up and you're all happy with life, and you go and spend a bit on retail therapy because the week was hard, or whatever the deal is. And when you look at what you're spending on that day where you kind of blow off a bit of steam, that might be the day of the week that's actually setting your whole financial position off track. And so it's not a case of saying that you can't have fun on a Saturday, or that you must now live like a hermit and save and have no joy in life anymore. That's certainly not the deal. But it's just a case of saying, be conscious that Saturdays is your weak point. So if it is your weak point, then don't fall into the bad habit again. Just stop and say, okay, I'm going to do one thing that's fun, and I know what I'm going to spend on it. I'm going to control that expenditure, and then all the other stuff that I've been wasting on purchases on that day, I'm just going to eliminate. You change one day a week, and let's say for some people that earn reasonably well, they might be spending 2,000 Rand every Saturday on random stuff that just makes no difference to their actual lives. You add that up, it gets to over 100,000 Rand in a year, and 100,000 Rand, that starts to become replacing your car money in a very short space of time. So I think that you can do a lot by just understanding what your bad habits are and what is the weak point in your week, and make that a controlled spend. Again, don't start the year thinking you can't have fun or you can't spend on enjoyment stuff. It's just be a bit more controlled.
There are a couple of other bad habits we look at as well. Tim's got in touch, Warren, and asked, I'd like to improve my personal finance knowledge. What suggestions do you have? Tim will have an answer for you from Warren in just a moment.
The Money Show. Personal finance with Warren Ingram.
8 minutes to 8 the time. And Tim's question, Warren, I'd like to improve my personal finance knowledge. What suggestions do you have? Warren, where would you start? Because I think for a lot of people, to begin the process of educating yourself, you almost don't know where to start.
There's this fabulous segment on this very well-respected show called The Money Show.
And presenter's an idiot,
on that Money Show, there is this thing called personal finance, and it's actually available as a podcast. And the interesting thing here is no one asked me to say this, but I just think if you want to get something free that's useful, this is a place to go. I mean, I think you build up a store of knowledge over time. And again, it's doing something once a week where you get a little bit of bite-sized information that builds up. So to me, that's one. The second, the next two are books. And I like books because we have to read them, when we're not driving and when we're not distracted, and we can absorb. And the first one is a book called The Psychology of Money, by a guy called Morgan Housel. He's probably the best money writer I've ever come across. And so, and unfortunately he's an American, but other than that, he's a very good guy. And that book, I think, helps us understand ourselves and how we build up our financial knowledge. And then there is the next book is, and it's got a rude word in the title, which I'm not going to say, but it's Manage Your Money Like a Grown-Up. And that's written by Sam Beck-Bessinger. And I think for me, that's really detailed book, to help you kind of fill a framework for where you're going. So those would be my three tips to people to build up their knowledge. And for someone like Tim, take time, give yourself a goal. I'm going to listen to the Money Show once a week, or every day if you can, and at least get the personal finance segment going. But then give yourself the chance to read those two books over the year, and you'll find your knowledge starts to build and compound over time.
And that's really the important thing, is suddenly you find yourself, I've found just in the last sort of 18 months, suddenly I know a lot more than I used to. We were talking about some of the bad habits, and one of them is subscription creep. And I do this from time to time. Go through your credit card and your normal account and just see what you're actually subscribed to. And you can astonish yourself.
And we see it on two things as well, as on our apps. The number of apps that we buy. You'll be very surprised where through a year you might decide I'm buying this this podcast app, or I'm buying this book app, and you start with all these good intentions, and you get to the end of the year and you look at what you've actually done, and you haven't read a single book online, etc. And so go through all of those subscriptions and cancel the things you haven't used for the year, or for the last 3 months of the year, if nothing else, and just make sure that you're not paying for things that you've forgotten about. And it's always surprising. I do it. I try and do it at on the December holidays, and I find 2 or 3 subscriptions or apps that I've got that I can't even remember exactly why I did it, and it was obviously a good idea at the time, and so cancel those, and that ends up being a few hundred or a few thousand rand a year that you save yourself. And then I'm going to add to that is then redirect that money to your savings straight away. If we're spending $50 a month on an app that you no longer need, send that into savings.
Yeah, and do it, straight away. It suddenly makes obvious sense. And the I'll sort it out later habit, because there are quite a few things that build up over time you just never get to.
We should be, as a matter of course, doing things like reviewing our short-term insurance once a year. Do we still have that laptop that we were insuring 3 years ago? And, do you still want to insure whatever it is, the watch or the phone or whatever that item is? And so review your insurance now. Take the opportunity. You might save yourself some money. And then I would add to that things like your will. When last did you check your will? And this is a good time to do it. And then your investments. If you haven't updated your retirement annuity contributions, for example, and you're still paying $500 a month like you were 5 years ago, well, if your salary's gone up, you should be paying more. So I would say choose one thing. Again, don't give yourself a whole laundry list of things you've got to do, but choose one of them and just accomplish that one thing this week. Just get it done. And it's amazing how those accomplishments will start to grow on themselves.
Is that true about longer term habits as well? If you sort of reassess yourself and create one new habit, does it become almost, I suppose, a keystone? A progress in one sector can lead to progress in others?
Exactly right. So we take a step in the right direction, and we start to feel good about ourselves, and we look around and we go, well, hang on, I've done this well, and actually it wasn't such a big deal. It wasn't as fearsome as I thought it was. So let me try another one. And so you start to build layer upon layer upon layer, and eventually you realize life's going in the right direction again, and it wasn't such a big issue. But if you've given yourself that massive goal at the start, you go nowhere. So I think the way we change our lives financially is we do it one habit at a time, and one small attainable habit, not a big goal. We don't get to climb Everest by starting at the bottom and jumping to the top. We do it one step after boring step to get in the right direction.
All about momentum, isn't it? So often these things are. Warren, thank you very much indeed. You're as optimistic for 2026 as everyone else?
I am. I mean, I'm always going to start by saying, all of my predictions are pretty useless, especially about sport and the direction of markets. But I think we've got a lot going for us this year if interest rates keep going down, which I suspect they will now that the oil price is going down as well. And if that carries on, I think we're on a good trajectory.
Warren Ingram, thanks very much indeed. Co-founder and a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital with personal finance. What was the name of that podcast you mentioned?